So when you're doing your research, do you have like a certain structure that you start with? How do you find these juicy questions? Like, do you go to certain sites? Do you start with this and then go to that? Or is it random? Like, how do you do that?
So it used to be kind of random.
Yeah.
It used to be like I had no flow. I would like write it all down. And what I've recently started doing is I've started typing it on the computer. And so I've kind of gone out of being strict with it. Like I used to set timelines, like I have 1 hour. Once I'm done 1 hour, I can't research anymore. Like it's 1 hour of me writing things down. Yeah. And so now how it will go is I'll download some podcasts. If there's time to listen to all the podcasts, I'll download all the podcasts they've been on. Some people it's just none. Some people it's 1 or 2. Some people it's like 6, which is great. Yeah. And so the podcast is probably where I get the best questions because it's an hour and people don't realize what they're saying sometimes. Yeah. So like some of the questions where I've blown people's mind, they're like, how did you find that?
Because they dropped a little thing and
said it.
Got it.
And I just want to ask you about it. So like they'll forget that they said it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I get some questions that blow people's mind. And then other than that, I do a deep dive on the internet. Yeah. Just Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Google everything. Yeah. Any articles that they've been in, anything that they've written. I like read everything. And then so I'll write down all the main points. That's my big thing. And then once that's done, I just go and I write all the sub points to everything. And that leads to 2-3 pages worth of notes. And then I just go from there. So that's kind of, but it never used to be that structured.
Do you write out formal questions or do you just bullet point a thought and kind of go with the flow of the conversation and insert it?
Sometimes I'll bullet point, like if I know like a specific question, don't forget this, I'll write it down. Okay. But sometimes it'll be like, yeah, I guess some of it's quite a bit of questions. Okay. But it's not like they'll answer that and then I'm like, okay, on to the next question. Yeah. Like I'll just kind of like wherever the flow of the podcast is, like today or the one I was recording this morning, we jumped ahead a little bit and then we came back and I got all the questions that we skipped, but just because of the flow of the conversation, I'm not like bound to the order of the questions.
For sure. So. Yeah. Very cool. So that's how you do your research on the guests. How do you actually find the guests? I know you do a little bit of referrals, but other than those, like, what would you say the amount of your guests is from referrals, like percentage-wise, like 20% of referrals, or like do you actively look on Instagram, Facebook, and stuff, or do you let them come to you, or like how does it kind of work?
So for the most part, it's just me reaching out to people.
How do you find them?
Instagram.
Do you
Instagram,
actively
Twitter,
like search things, or how do you find them?
I used to when I started. Okay. Especially because when I first started, I was like, I don't want to do remote ones. I want them all to be in person. Yep. So I went through the Ottawa Instagram location.
Ran out after about 15 episodes. And
no, I have a list of over 200 people in Ottawa.
Jeez.
With over 10. Like I had like a spreadsheet and like it was all there.
Yeah, I love it. Data points on them all.
Yeah. I had like how many followers they had at the time and like everything. And
you should sell that to businesses for local influencers.
Yeah. I have a list on my phone too of like 50 people that just never made it to the list.
Wow.
But now, especially because I'm so far ahead, right? Like where it's August 29th right now. Mm-hmm. I think I have episodes recorded until the end of October.
Jeez.
So it's like now I don't have to be as like constantly looking.
You wait for the right ones.
I don't wait. Well, kind of. Like I don't message as many people probably as I used to. Now I ask, like you said, the referrals thing. That's something I've recently started making sure I do. I ask people if there's anyone you know, let me know. Like I'm always looking, and I always say if it's someone that you think would be good for the podcast and that would want to come on.
Right, because it's almost a double-edged sword in the sense like they're probably a good guest in terms of like quality, but you can also probably get them through this person.
Yeah, and I never want to ask people like specifically for someone. Like I know that you know people. Like I can see that we follow the same person, that they follow you back. But I'm never going to be like, hey, I know you know this person. Can you ask them? Like,
why? Why wouldn't you do that?
I just don't want to put them in that position. And I never want someone to feel like I interviewed them just to try and get to someone else. You know what I mean?
Interesting. Because I think if you frame it correctly, then it's not. You could just be like, look, I noticed that so-and-so follows you. I'm like a huge fan. Mm-hmm. If you feel comfortable, I'd love to get them on my podcast. If you don't, totally cool. Like, I just wanted to shoot my shot now that I have it. Or,
yeah.
You know?
Usually what I do with that, because I try and keep a connection with the people I have on my podcast. So I'll always just say, if there's anyone you know, let me know. Like, I'm always looking. Yeah. And then what I do, though, is if I do get to a point where I do reach out to that person that they know, I send them a message. Hey, by the way, I saw you know this person. I just sent them a message asking them to come on the podcast. Can you put in a good word? Like, you've been on the show. Just be like, hey, I was on the show as well. Which, with that in mind, I was told, and this was crazy for me, like, this blew my mind. I had to guess somebody like, yeah, you have a pretty good reputation around the Vayner office.
Yeah, for sure, man.
And I was like, that's cool. Just because, like...
You've interviewed so many of them.
I know. I just joked that I should change the name of the podcast to My Vayner Life at this point.
Like, that's so funny.
Literally, I've interviewed Brandon Hatcher, Caleb Ralston, Daniel Ossie, Max Brown, Seth Feingersh, and I've got another one.
And I mean, they probably know you as the guy who interviews all the Vayner employees,
probably.
right?
I've got another one coming up, too, with another one that was a recommendation. It was like, I asked someone, like, hey, do you know anybody else? He's like, yeah, you should interview Gary's other videographer, like this guy, and then send me his info.
100%.
So.
I love that.